Don't lose sleep over defections. APC Governors Forum assures President Muhammadu Buhari.
We are here to let Mr. President know that we are with him, and nobody is leaving the party anymore.
President Buhari meets security chiefs on the security situation in the country.
Gambian President Adama Barrow wants African democracies to entrench separation of powers for accountability and service delivery.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the rights of patients within the Nigerian healthcare system.
We shall also examine the state of registration and birth in Nigeria. The amount of money Nigeria loses in foreign exchange to medical tourism remains yet another symptom of the fledgling state of the Nigerian healthcare system, where both facilities and manpower are inadequate.
Quite right, Joy, but this is just one leg of the challenges with the Nigerian healthcare system. Another challenge that appears even more crucial is the quality of actual services rendered and satisfaction derived by the clients of such services.
That's right, Kingsley, and that is the biggest question.
Sure.
How satisfied are Nigerians with the health care services they pay for? Do they get value for money, and do they know their rights and privileges? And to what extent do caregivers uphold the rights of patients, which are somewhat embedded in their oath of service?
Very pertinent questions, Joy. Now, to break it down to practical issues, many Nigerians may have at one time or the other complained of overbilling, lack of access to information, denial of treatment, as well as nonchalant attitude by caregivers or outright negligence, among other complaints.
Of course, this is why the federal government recently launched the Patient's Bill of Rights, with the aim of putting on the front burner the need to promote, defend, and enforce the rights of Nigerians who seek medical care.
All right, and this is why this morning we shall seek to unravel what this is all about and how it might help boost Nigeria's healthcare system. Now, will the patients have cause to smile, as it were? And what is the thinking of medical practitioners on the question of the Bill of Rights for patients? This and more we shall find answers to from our guests in our conversation segment.
Also, today we shall look at the issue of civic registration and the vital statistics
That's right.
for national development. Now, it is a known fact that most African countries, Nigeria inclusive, don't have proper records of births and deaths, which is important for planning.
Now, apart from births and deaths, events in between these two are seldom recorded, resulting in despondency among many, which therefore then gives room, as it were, for the exploitation of the weak and vulnerable in society. So this morning, as part of our conversation, that's the second leg, we shall also look into this matter of adequate registration of births and deaths and other relevant events towards, of course, what we're looking at, civil registration and vital statistics. This is Outlook for Good Morning Nigeria today, of course, from down south on the African continent. There is a president-elect for Zimbabwe.
Oh, that's right.
Incumbent President Emerson Mnangagwa was declared winner of the elections. About 7 hours or so ago, he won by 50.8% against closest rival Nelson Chamisa, who got 44.3% of the votes, just a difference of about 340,000. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the program, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority.
And I am Joy Usiago. Good to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city. As always, the complimentary part of the program shall be brought to you, including newspaper review, business, sports, foreign and entertainment news. The morning news is right now with Kene Imagbodike. Hello, Kene.
Good morning, and here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari has left Abuja for London on holiday. Correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the president departed Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport about 5:30 Friday morning. He was seen off by the Minister of the FCT, Mohammed Sani Bello, his Chief of Staff, Abba Kyari, Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, and other senior government officials. During his 10 days vacation, Vice President Yemi Oshibajo will act as president. A written communication to that effect has already been forwarded to both the Senate President and Speaker, House of Representatives, in compliance with Section 145, Subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. Before departing for London, President Muhammadu Buhari had called on the people of Bauchi South Senatorial District to keep faith with the All Progressives Congress as it continues to deliver on its campaign promises. He was speaking at the flag-off campaign of Bauchi South Senatorial by-election. The president urged the people of the constituency to replace their late competent Senator Ali Wakili with an equally tested, trusted, and loyal APC member, adding that this will enable the party consolidate on the good work it is doing.
Da sanin mu ba za mu yadda a cuce ku ba. Abin da ke gaban mu a kyautata ƙasa, a kyautata tsaro, a kyautata arziki, a kuma hana cin hanci da rashawa.
The late senator could have readily be available on the side of Mr. President and of the APC. Unfortunately, we can't question God, he has passed. So to have him replaced by a senator on our own platform is extremely important.
The presence of Mr. President is very, very vital for us. It has gone to stamp our victory, so to say.
Meanwhile, members of the Progressive Governors Forum are asking President Muhammadu Buhari not to lose any sleep whatsoever over defection from the governing party, assuring him of their collective determination to work assiduously towards the renewal of his mandate in 2019. Chairman of the Forum and Governor of Imo State, Rochas Okorocha, stated their position while speaking to journalists after a solidarity visit to the Nigerian leader.
We are still as strong, even much stronger, much more united. We have 22 states, 53 senators. We're still the majority, and we're hoping to get more into our party. So we are here to let Mr. President know that we're with him, and nobody is leaving the party anymore. Nigerians are aware of the truth, and there's no deceit anymore. And they know that President Buhari means well. We assure Nigerians that come 2019, our victory is assured, and we ask all Nigerians to support the APC and give President Muhammad Buhari a chance to complete laying this solid foundation upon which the subsequent Nigerian nation shall be built.
All of these issues taken together have not in any way weakened the capacity of our party and of the federal government to govern the country and to uphold all of those core values of progressive governance.
Now, secretaries to governments of states governed by the All Progressives Congress APC in Nigeria have been challenged to share ideas towards the formulation of common programs that will enhance socio-economic development of their state. Ogun State Governor Ibikunle Amosun gave the charge at the 7th quarterly meeting of secretaries to governments of APC-controlled state in Abuja.
Have a very significant and pivotal role to play, and I must confess that we are doing wonderfully well. Honestly, it is not just maybe because we are APC or we are just looking for the camera. No, indeed we are Nigeria was before we came in. It can only happen in this part of the world that those that wreck this our economy can have the effrontery to say they want to come back again.
Instituting a stable democratic government requires constitutionally vibrant and independent components that are governed by separation of powers in relation to the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. President of the Republic of the Gambia, Adama Barrow, stated this at the Course 26 graduation lecture of the National Defense College.
The application of the principle of democratic governance is a system in which popular rules, values, procedures, and actions are structured, sustained, regulated, and accountable. And in addition to conducting strategic level training, the college also proposed research and strategic level discourse on contemporary and thematic areas of international, regional, and national security.
President Muhammadu Buhari has met behind closed doors with security chiefs over security situation in the country. A statement by the public relations officer to the Minister of Defense, Colonel Tuko Gusau, indicates that in order to forestall future security incidents in Zamfara, Sokoto and Benin-Gwari axis, Operation Sharan Daji has been extended to cover up to the fringes of Niger border. The operation has recently been reinforced with more troops from the Nigerian Armed Forces, Nigerian Police and Department of State Services, and is supported by the Intelligence, Surveillance and Reconnaissance Wing of 207 Quick Response Group of the Nigerian Air Force. The joint operation, he says, has successfully arrested some suspected armed bandits and recovered arms and ammunition similarly. Similarly, security agencies have been directed to increase patrols along Abuja-Kaduna Highway in order to address cases of attacks and kidnappings. The federal government is willing to work with development partners who share the same vision of accelerating Nigeria's growth, especially with regards to the reforms in the power sector. The Minister of Finance, Kemi Adoshu, who stated this while receiving the World Bank Vice President for Africa, Hafiz Ghanem, said government is willing to leverage on the expertise of the bank to sustain economic growth.
I think the one area where we're hoping to make a lot of progress very quickly, or where we need to make, is the power sector reform program, which is an extremely important program to us. For us, as far as GDP growth is concerned, the one thing that's really going to accelerate growth is power.
I wanted to come and listen to you to see how we can support Nigeria, how we can help get the Nigerian economy grow faster and achieve all your development objectives.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Joy and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Your favorite Maggi star now wears a new look. Its great taste and quality still remain the same. With Maggi, every woman is a star.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortise Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortise Power Guard.
The Apostolic Church Nigeria, Lona Territory, presents 42nd Lona International Convention, coupled with the centenary celebration of the Apostolic Church Nigeria, between 4th and 10th August 2018 at the International Convention Grounds, Oworoshoki Ibadan Expressway, Lagos, Nigeria. Theme: the imminence of the Second Coming, Revelation 22:7. Ministry: Pastor Dr. E.S. Awujide JP, Vice President, the Apostolic Church Nigeria, and Chairman, Lona Territory. Pastor Dr. J.O.D. Ekele, Lona Administrative Secretary, and other anointed ministers of God. Announcer: Pastor C.D. Singo, Convention Committee Chairman, Pastor L.A. Ojo, Convention Committee Secretary.
The social media era has brought goodies to the society. Telecoms like our own dear indigenous Glo has brought us data to smarten our lives in today's smart world. Oh yes, but are you using the social media wisely, or are you spreading sensation, half-truths and lies?
Na viral video nami atalam po alani. So if alani I got the spread and for viral message, that one nang asabian, it no concern me.
Viral videos is the title of this week's episode of Professor John Bull. Join us and laugh like never before.
Come 4 p.m.
4 p.m. is evening, now we're talking about afternoon.
Say who you say is evening.
4 o'clock, evening starts.
I don't know they've changed the time. Oh.
Nobody changed anything. It has been like that since I became a human being.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glo.
The largest data network. Glo Unlimited.
Winning in hot and dry conditions is hard. Causes the body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another.
What keeps you so cool, man?
Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection and an invincible icy feel. For super cool confidence, use Dettol Cool.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
It's Good Morning, Nigeria, and we thank you for staying with us. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria is working with other critical stakeholders to substantially address gaps that could leave the country's financial system vulnerable to cyber attacks. Details with Comfort Amodo.
A warm welcome. According to data from the 2018 Making Business Work report, more than $83.9 billion worth of investment were recorded between January 2017 and the first quarter of 2018. The report, which evaluates government's effort in improving the business environment in Nigeria, was presented Tuesday to Vice President Yemi Osinbajo by the Enabling Business Environment Secretariat during the monthly meeting of the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. And now the diversity and cost of cyber attacks have necessitated the global conversation around building resilient systems that will further secure financial systems around the world. Deputy Governor Financial System Stability of Central Bank of Nigeria, Aisha Ahmed, says the increasing threat posed by cyber criminals make it imperative for the Apex Bank to continuously adopt measures that keep the crimes at a minimal level. While addressing participants at a conference on cybersecurity jointly organized with JP Morgan Chase, the Deputy Governor reiterated the CBN's commitment to a stable and safe financial system in the country and for all investors.
And most importantly, at the end of the conference, I want us to leave with practical ideas we can immediately implement to ensure we build more resilient cybersecurity platforms.
So we're building capability internally to ensure that we not only are able to detect when something goes wrong, but we're able to also respond as quickly as possible and protect ourselves.
electronic transactions have grown by over 150% year on year. So if you see a growth in fraud of 10% year on year, it means relatively it is less. And one of the reasons for that is that every year, when there's a review of what has been done or what has happened, there are suggestions to financial institutions on how to improve security.
Now, a quick look at the NIC closing figures. And with that, we conclude Business News. I'm Comfort Amodu. Thanks for being there.
Thank you very much, Comfort, for the business package. Next for us now, we'll review the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Going straight into newspaper review, let's look at some of the stories trending. We'll take a look at the Punch, and the lead story there says, defections, God will continue to fish out bad eggs amongst us, says Buhari. And it comes with a rider which says, President's vacation ploy to impeach Saraki, and it is attributed to Ekweremadu of the PDP. You can find details of that story on page 2. And turning to The Guardian, the lead story there says, Wamako vows showdown, insists APC controls Sokoto. It has 2 riders. Saraki Tambuwal attend PDP NEC meeting. Kwara groups, governor disagree over defection. Let's hear what you have there.
All right. So virtually, the headlines speak for themselves. And so virtually on the same issues of politics, matters arising from defection. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph. New Telegraph lead story is as follows. God will chase away criminals and bad eggs from APC. That's according to President Buhari. With 4 riders. Oshomole, defectors afraid they'll rot in prison. Otom, I left APC poorer. And Saraki, I offer myself in defense of democracy. Wole Soyinka, nobody should be crucified for defection. Details can be found on pages 2 and 7. And immediately below that, the photograph of some of the leaders of the PDP governors and new returnees to the party at the NEC meeting of the PDP in Abuja yesterday. Beside that is the story, Bode George, how Ajimobi and Otudeko reconciled Tinubu and I. Details can be found on page 3. And for the Nigerian Tribune, politics is also the lead story. And it's just above the lead story, by the way, before we start that, and below the nameplate, it's still on defection. It says, defections, God will continue to fish out bad eggs among us. Buhari says in Bauchi, that was during the campaign rally yesterday. Details of that story can be found on page 4. Lead says, Saraki, Tambuwal, Otom talk tough at PDP NEC meeting. Will resist any attempt to remove Senate President. That's according to Tambuwal. Let's unite to save Nigeria, Saraki. I lost everything I took to APC. That's Otom. At CUPP meeting, Galadima says, taking power from Buhari, Herculean task. No peace in Senate till Saraki resigns. That's according to a Kasina senator. SAN, an MBA leader, fault Oshomole on call for Saraki to step down. And then just a story also on politics. Let's take this, because we had a story yesterday. It's on the contempt charge against the INEC chairman. The story is there on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. That's the first column on the right-hand side, and that's actually the last headline. Contempt. INEC chairman appeals court ruling. There's an order for his arrest on account of alleged disobedience of court order. So he's appealing and saying that he wasn't personally required to appear in court, and that's why he had not appeared in court. But that regardless, he has filed a notice of appeal against the order for his arrest.
And then there's this one about the governor of Benue State. I think we should take it before analysis. It says, Otom, if you look at the punch above the nameplate, Otom should not be crucified for defecting. And that comment is attributed to Professor Wale Soyinka. You can get details of that story on page 7.
All right, yeah, but let's continue with the headlines. As I said, the headlines actually speak for themselves.
Yes.
With regard to the depth of the coverage, but it's an economic story. Before we turn to other stories, on the front page of the New Telegraph, this time above the nameplate, it's talking about the indebtedness of the states, and it says states' domestic debts hit 11.08 trillion naira in 5 years. Lagos, Delta, Rivers, Edo, and Kaduna most indebted states. Yobe, Sokoto, and Anambra least indebted. So that's an issue that has been on for some years now. You have had denials in the past, and of course some states like Lagos and I believe Rivers and Kano have often said, Kano is not mentioned here, have often said that their IGR together with receipts from the Federation account would suffice in helping to amortize whatever debts that they have taken. In any event, some of them argue that these are debts that have been incurred for developmental projects.
Yes. Now, let's talk a bit about the headlines, those related to politics and the issue of defection.
That's right.
You know, talking about the gale of defection, I listened to a couple of people discussing yesterday, and they're of the opinion that, yes, this is the right time for some people to re-strategize as we move towards 2019. But again, they argue that shouldn't we be focusing more on governance at this time?
Well, that's a pertinent question. It was always clear that once the election season opened, governors would most likely take a backseat, despite all pronouncements to the contrary. It's inevitable that politicians, will be seeking to survive in the meantime, and then also seeking to manage their future, which is to say, look, what is the most convenient platform for me to seek re-election? What is the most convenient arrangements that we can have for our party to succeed? Because the way our electoral system is structured is winner take all. In other words, as the first past post, so first past the post. If you score 51% and the other party scores 49%, the party that scores 51% virtually has the equivalent of 100%, because the 49% loses out and then the 51 also wins. So we're going to see a lot of this. Now, the primaries are also impending. And after October, when it should be between now and October, when the primaries are conducted and some persons lose out on current platforms where they are on, you would find that they will hunt for other platforms and then seek to get their tickets. We have seen that play out over and over again, at least in particular in the Fourth Republic.
Now, that leads me to another pertinent question, because you hear people say that the electorate gets to bear the brunt of all this movement here and there. And some people are also of the opinion that it is good that President Muhammadu Buhari and those who are loyal to the party are focusing on the issue of governance.
Well, that's true. There's no doubt about that. The president, before he took off about 2 hours ago on his vacation, had a meeting with the security chiefs on account of the security situation, the insecurity in some parts of the country, particularly in the northwest now, that we have seen Sokoto and Zamfara in particular. There are stories on those ones. Maybe we'll turn to those stories and then see how the government is trying to deal with that. That's the lead story for the Nigerian pilot, and it's entitled Insecurity. Now, I just must wonder, because this is fairly consistent with the paper, the exclamation mark after insecurity. It's the style of the Nigerian pilot, and some might say that tends to exaggerate the subject matter. But there are a number of writers to that headline. Buhari meets service chiefs behind closed doors as they demand more equipment to battle insurgents and bandits. Zamfara, Sokoto, Birnin-Gwari, major targets. That's according to DSS boss, and says Operation Sharandaji reinforced and extended to Niger borders. That story.
We have a similar story here. If you turn to the front page of The Guardian, it says, beside the picture story on your right, it says, Buhari meets security chiefs. Minister seeks retooling of the military.
That's right. That's what I was just also going to read out, because you have the military chiefs asking for more equipment and more arms. Just below the nameplate of the New Telegraph, where you have a window of 4 headlines. The second one there says, insecurity, military makes fresh demand for arms and equipment. That's on page 5.
We had this in the previous administration. Does it mean when there is a new administration, we keep asking for more?
Well, even in the current administration, I mean, there was a $1 billion fund that the 3 tiers of government were supposed to make contributions to. Yeah, but these are, I'm sure that these are issues that will have to be looked into by the National Assembly on account of this fresh request, whether they have exhausted what went on before, or whether, in fact, they succeeded in procuring the arms and equipment that they had previously requested for. And let's take a look at other headlines from the Nigerian pilot. Below the photograph there of the Nigerian pilot, this story is also trending on other stories. By the way, let me just read this out in terms of the insecurity and therefore seeing the response that the federal government is attaching to this banditry. Just at the foot of the front page of the Nigerian pilot, banditry. Zamfara, state records 34,000 IDPs in 1 week. Zamfara State records 34,000 IDPs in 1 week. So apart from restoring order, you're not having the situation with the IDPs that the governments, federal, state and local governments should respond to with regard to the displacement of the persons. On Monday, we saw photographs of persons who were fleeing their villages in Zamfara on account of the attack by bandits. But at the same time, the president had earlier deployed some 1,000 personnel, and the Air Force has also deployed some of his platforms, to deal with the problem.
And what role, in terms of support from the states, I wonder what role they're playing in terms of support from the state?
Well, you have to provide succor for your citizens who are displaced. Yeah, that's right. Just very quickly, this one below the photograph of a Nigerian pilot. Sarap gives NYSC 7-day ultimatum on Adeosun's exemption certificate. That story can be found on page 7. All right, do you have another story?
To The Guardian, let's look at the foot of the front page. It says, why Nigeria is key to Africa's growth by World Bank. And it comes with 2 riders. FG6 intervention in power sector. CBN, JP Morgan move to tackle cyber crime.
All right, so that's the much that we can take. A story on the front page of New Telegraph says, high fiber diets will help you reduce your stress. And inside, you'll find that Dr. John Abebe, Obasanjo's in-law, has been granted bail. So that's the much we can take from the papers. All right, let's take a short break. Now, when we return, we have 2 items for our conversation. The first, of course, has to do with the patient's rights of Bill of Rights. And secondly, registration of births and deaths.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs, which are everywhere. You collect germs that cause diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands and taking your bath with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is bath, bath, bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
Whenever pain occurs, you want quick relief. Try new Nurofen Express. It goes to the source of pain and gets to work in under 15 minutes. That's why Nurofen Express delivers fast and effective relief. New Nurofen Express works at the source of pain. Fast.
Being a mom is great, but when your child has a fever, you don't know what to do. I trust Nurofen for Children to take care of my child's pain and fever.
Effective relief you can trust.
Winning in hot and dry conditions is hard. Causes the body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another.
What keeps you so cool, man?
Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection and an invincible icy feel. For super cool confidence, use Dettol Cool.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortise Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortise Power Guard.
What makes a Nigerian mom powerful?
I trust the power of Dettol's One Capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's One Capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
Thank you very much for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria, the last for the week. Now, to set the tone for our discussion on the rights of patients in the Nigerian healthcare system, let's take this background report put together by Dennis Adigmoloye.
It was an emergency. The nurse was like, they've closed.
When my daughter wanted to put to bed, she was standing there when baby came and they saw baby in her hand.
These experiences speak of some of the nightmares that many Nigerians pass through in a bid to get service from the healthcare system. Invariably, this adds to the myriad of problems the healthcare industry in Nigeria is saddled with. So Nigerians who can afford it either seek exclusive treatment abroad or at home. To at least ensure that the patient is king in the Nigerian health system, the Patient's Bill of Rights has been birthed. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who launched the initiative, says it is a major step in legally protecting the rights of Nigerians undergoing medical care and ensuring that the right to life is sacrosanct.
The preeminent human right is the right to life. But the right to life is a hollow platitude where life itself is without respect for the dignity of the individual. The Patient's Bill of Rights is the bridge of dignity that links the right to life and minimum standards of healthcare that all of us deserve just by being human beings.
This initiative is also in tandem with the pursuit of attaining universal health coverage by devoting 1% of the Consolidated Revenue Fund to funding critical health initiatives in compliance with the National Health Act.
The Patient's Bill of Rights is a very timely complement to these policy and funding interventions. It will ensure that the increased funding that is coming into the healthcare system in Nigeria translates into a direct improvement in the quality of the final output at what one might call the last mile phase of healthcare delivery.
The commitment of this administration to revamping the Nigerian health system by making the primary care system the fulcrum of achieving excellent health services for our people, while upgrading the tertiary health institutions to deliver quality care when needed and minimizing medical tourism.
It represents our collective commitment to improving care. This turning point in our development as a nation has been a long time coming. It represents a point where we set a new culture for ourselves. It is now up to us to ensure that that culture survives.
When you walk into a facility, the services that are to be should be displayed in that place. And the patient have a right to be treated before money.
We will stand by this bill. We shall join the CPC in creating more awareness.
The Patient's Bill of Rights provides for patients' rights to information, immediate medical intervention, clean and secure environment, respect for human dignity, timely access to medical records, and expression of dissatisfaction. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will discuss the implementation of this initiative.
All right, thank you very much, Dennis, for that backgrounder. Joining us now to discuss this issue in greater detail is the Director General of the Consumer Protection Council, Babatunde Irukera. Irukera, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Dr. Emmanuel Meribole. He's Director, Department of Health Planning, Research and Statistics of the Federal Ministry of Health. Dr. Meribole, pleasure to have you on the program.
Good morning.
All right, enjoy.
And also Professor Mike Ogirima, the immediate past president, Nigerian Medical Association, is joining us from our Kaduna studio. Thanks for joining us, Professor Ogirima.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right.
All right, let's begin. You listen to the background report, and near the end, there's a summary, as it were, of what is contained in the Patient's Bill of Rights. But let's bring in Dr. Meribole, who himself was involved in the drafting of the Patient's Bill of Rights. Lead us some more into what the bill entails.
The bill basically is about making sure the patients get the right kind of care at every part of healthcare. If you recall, we have the National Health Act 2014. The third part of the Act, from Section 20 to Section 30, talks about the patient's rights and the responsibilities of the healthcare providers. One of the things the Patient's Rights Bill has been able to do is to aggregate all these sections and be able to let the public know what is the right of the patient, what is the right of the healthcare provider, and when there are issues, how do they seek redress? I think in a nutshell, that's what the Patient's Rights has been able Bill of Rights has been able to aggregate. So it's a watershed in the Nigerian healthcare system, in that we should take the patient as the king in every facet of healthcare system.
Well, it gladdens my heart that this initiative is coming at this time. But one of a pertinent question to ask at this moment is, why is this initiative coming now? I mean, this is a movement that started a long time ago, way back to the 1960s. Why is Nigeria just latching onto it right now?
Well, if you say it's latching onto it, that's not absolutely correct. Most times things go underground, but you need the last finishing touches for you to see the thing coming out. So there has been a lot of work going on, and that is because we are not happy with what we are seeing. So this is an aggregation of all the work that has been going on. And as the CPC, DG said when he was doing the launch of the Patient's Bill of Rights, this has involved a lot of stakeholders. It just put in an icing to the cake. And now we are talking about universal health coverage. We are talking about access to healthcare, quality healthcare. And we need to ensure that everybody needs to know what he needs to do at that point. And even the receiver, who happens to be the patient, he needs to know his rights. And the healthcare provider also needs to know what he's expected to provide. And the public, they also need to know. So in all, we just happen to have somebody in the Consumer Protection, CPC, Consumer Protection Council, who decided to aggregate all this and bring it to the fore. And we are happy Mr. Vice President is launching it, because it shows highest political will to patients' care. And that's the way to
All right, thank you very much. And we already introduced Babatunde Irukera, who is Director General of the CPC. Give us a sense of why this is being front-loaded at this time.
Well, thank you for the question. I started work at the
CPC about 14, 15 months ago. And in the first week that I started work, it was very clear to me that an iteration of the rights of patients was going to be one of the most fundamental accomplishments that the Consumer Protection Council could bring to bear, considering what the healthcare space is and the multiple challenges, whether it's hard infrastructure or funding and all kinds of other things. I realized that healthcare is something that affects everybody, and what would be the greatest priority that a Consumer Protection Authority can accomplish with respect to citizens. And I realized that there's a soft infrastructure part of healthcare, and it's more so in healthcare because I firmly believe that there's an inextricable link between feeling and healing. And so maybe we cannot address the questions of how many beds a hospital has, how many nurses that we're training or putting on the job, or doctors' salaries, or even power and all the other infrastructure. But we can address the compassion and the quality of interaction that occurs in that sector. And because for me, the health sector, the healthcare sector is a place where there is absolutely no margin of error. I mean, there's no latitude for that. And so if we treat people right, we will essentially prevent injury and certainly save lives. And so that's why we at the CPC prioritized this. And we started out to work immediately and developed consensus amongst a very broad-based stakeholder engagement. And we worked together to develop this Patient's Bill of Rights. And as Dr. Meribole said, the current administration is very supportive, actually championed it in many ways, and that's why it was recently launched and launched by the Vice President.
Now, how often do you get patients coming to complain about some of the challenges they face as we talk about the healthcare system in Nigeria?
You know, the interesting thing is that we didn't get that much complaints.
Really?
Yes. And for me, that was an indication of how bad the situation was. Typically, when there are no complaints, it's supposed to suggest that things are working well. But it is apparent to all of us, in and outside the industry, that the situation is bad. And so not getting complaints seems suggested to me that the situation is so bad, people did not know their rights, or they had resigned themselves to a poor faith. Both can be addressed by a Patient's Bill of Rights.
Yes, because I have a strong feeling that many patients do not know their rights.
Absolutely.
Now, what can your organization do in terms of creating awareness as we move ahead to the issue of implementation?
Very good. And the typical approach to consumer education or rights awareness is to, as much as possible, provide the information to the consumer. But I've seen that, quite frankly, I'm not sure that that's the best approach. One of the things I've repeatedly advocated to industry in the period that I've been at the Consumer Protection Council is that consumer education is as much a responsibility of goods manufacturers or service providers. They found a way to advertise their products. They found a way to reach into the hearts of these consumers and make them sign on to using their products. They must use those mechanisms. They must use those channels also to educate the consumers about their rights. And it's in that partnership that policy and industry can work together. And so in this case, one of the key ways that we're going to be doing this is working through the healthcare providers themselves, using hospitals, using all their associations to at least educate their own members who also would educate the patients. Of course, we would also have a comprehensive consumer awareness campaign on these. Town hall meetings will go from state to state and local government to local government. We're printing these and putting it in different places, in different languages. We're causing hospitals to print it and put it also on the in the hospitals. But in healthcare, the vast majority of the whole respect for rights must be on the provider, because that's a very vulnerable point. And most people who are patients are not even in a position to demand, much less insist on their rights. And so we're going to focus a lot of the awareness on the provider side.
Well, stay with you before we bring in the former president of the Nigerian Medical Association. How will the bill manifest itself in practice? What is the extent of the bill? What is the enforceability or the justiciability of the rights enshrined therein?
Good. Now, what it is, like Dr. Maribole said again, is that what we have done is to aggregate. I mean, my training is as a lawyer, so I understood that unless there is some statutory backing, there's some legal framework, enforceability is going to be a challenge. And so what we have done is we've not created any law. We've not created any right that doesn't already exist in an enforceable instrument. For instance, like you said, the National Health Act, the Constitution, the Freedom of Information Act, even professional ethical codes, the Consumer Protection Council Act. And so what would happen is that we at the Consumer Protection Council, from an enforcement standpoint, are looking to work with the authorities, especially the disciplinary authorities and regulators in the healthcare space, to ensure that as complaints come, especially when it's with respect to professional conduct, that the disciplinary process, either for an institution, a facility, or an individual who holds a license, becomes more robust. And as we begin to see that, it will do two things. It will certainly improve the standards, it would eliminate quacks, and it would also cause those who are not quacks to act more consistently with their obligations.
All right, thanks. Let's pause here in the meantime and then go to Kaduna Network Center, where we earlier introduced Professor, well, he's a doctor as well, Professor Mike Ogrima, former president of the Nigerian Medical Association. Just before you give us your thoughts on the Patient's Bill of Rights, there was a comment made by the DG of CPC right here with us in the Abuja studios that patients were not coming forward to lodge complaints about the treatment or otherwise that they had received at the hands of healthcare givers in the country, and that signified something. They had resigned to their fate, or they just decided to say, listen, no use. And that's obviously a sad commentary on the healthcare system of the country.
I think the DG CPC, since CPC is not a hospital-based council, we, the healthcare providers, the health workers, are faced every day with challenges from patients. I could remember several cases that were brought to my notice when I was the president of Nigerian Medical Association. But because there is no MDCN, the MDCN is that Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, which is supposed to deal directly with all these complaints. This body has persistently not been composed. As I'm talking now, there is a strong advocacy from Nigerian Medical Association that this body should be in existence to complement the efforts of various councils that are geared towards improving the healthcare, system. As MDCN is not in place, so the complaints are just piling up. I have so many complaints piled up, and there is no tribunal to try those cases.
All right, Professor Ogrima, well, that's one leg of it. I'm sure that both Dr. Maribole here and then Irukara will respond to the issues that you have touched on with regard to the lack of complaints, for instance, to the CPC. I believe that the consumer of healthcare services also has a right to lodge a complaint with the CPC. But let's now go straight on to the Bill of Rights. From the medical practitioner's point of view, what does this mean? Is it a new dawn?
A welcome development, because the Servicom of the country, when it came into existence, were not, very active in bringing out informations and pulling up the rights of patients, which is now pulled out by the CPC in conjunction with various stakeholders as the Patient's Bill of Rights. So, what has happened now is to sensitize the populace that you have your right as a patient. You have your right as a customer. Let me just put it in that way, because the customer is always the king. Here in the hospital setup, the patient must be treated as the king. So the patient's bill of right is just complementing the Medicare aspect of Servicom and bringing it to the forefront of the public so that implementing this bill of right and functioning within your code of ethics as a professional and with the oath or the pledge in various professions, once all these are complemented, the patients will have the best of the services.
Staying with you, sir, talking about patients and caregivers, you laid so much emphasis on the fact that the patient is king. Now, turning back to healthcare practitioners, are they aware of that same statement you just made, and how well have they put that into practice?
We are very much aware as doctors that our patient, in fact, the first statement of our pledge as a physician worldwide is that the health of my patient will be the priority. So any physician practicing anywhere that is not aware of this fact must be deceiving himself. And I keep on saying, when I was in office, I said, if you are a health worker and you find yourself within the hospital environment, it is a divine call. So playing around with with patients' rights or patients' health is undivine. And a divine call to any health professional is that take your patient as number one. Number two is that your environment of practice must be conducive. Even in the physician's pledge too, we also have in paragraph 11 of the physician's pledge that I will take care of my health, my well-being, before I could give such to any patient. So if that we are not working in a conducive environment in the hospital setup, how best will you give that health back to the patient? So they are all complementary. They are all holistic too. We must, as we are talking about patient bill of right, we must pursue the rights of the healthcare providers.
Professor Ogiri must stay with you. I'm sure that by the time we have reactions from our viewers, you will have many more questions to answer. Our Twitter handle is right there at the bottom left-hand corner on the screen at NTAGMA. But I would like you to address this. There are daily reports of the attitude of healthcare givers to emergency situations. In this country, it is almost certain that if you have an emergency, God has to be on your side for you to survive. The latest case, of course, being the young NYC person, a lady who was shot in Abuja here, and the stories are all over the place as to what happened to her. And you go to various hospitals, some of them private, most of them government-owned, and the way patients are treated is perhaps, what would give some people cause for joy on account of the launch of this Patients' Bill of Rights. If your members are so aware of their rights and their duties, why are we having this parlous situation, or if you like, scandalous mistreatment of patients?
It is very obvious that health workers are not having the best to give to patients. Our hospitals, our emergency rooms are not standardized enough. They are embedded in the National Health Act of 2014, of which our own strategic plan, the NMA strategic plan, is dealing with National Health Act as the theme, the thematic number 3. We are saying that once all the conditions are available, you go to emergency rooms, the gadgets are not there. Even if they are there, there's no power to power the gadgets. And you watch patients being brought to you. The health worker will not use just bare hand to treat these patients. The health workers will use their professional skills to make sure these patients are revived. And the health workers are there to define what emergencies are. Nigerians, the population, the patients, don't know what an emergency is. An emergency is that case that comes to a patient, that comes to a hospital within 1 hour, and action is to be taken. I'm not aware of what happened, the details of the actions they took at Gariki Hospital, but I am aware that the camera tracing at that very point in time showed that the Gariki Hospital staff attended to that copper. Everywhere in the country, if you go to any emergency room, that emergency room should have a complement of gadgets. In our own emergency rooms, we don't have them. We should not deceive ourselves. This is a country that is blessed with a lot of resources. Why are we not prioritizing our healthcare industry? If our populace must work and must live, our healthcare industry must be number one. And the government should look to that our emergency rooms must be well equipped, not just with personnel. In fact, we are even thinking we don't even have enough. Here we are, 45,000 Nigerian doctors taking care of a population of up to 200 million. We need up to 300,000 Nigerian doctors to take care of this population by the standard of WHO. That is minimum, basic requirement. Do we have it? So, a 45,000, a doctor taking care of more than 20,000 patients in a locality, it is killing, it is exhaustive. A lot of us are dying prematurely, even at the duty post. Nurses are dying, lab scientists are dying. We don't have enough. And if a patient comes to the hospital with an already frustrated workforce, what do you expect? There is an anger, but it is our advocacy. We plead all the time with ourselves that let's maintain our cool. It will be better soon. How soon will that better Nigerian health work come into being?
All right, Professor Ogirima, thank you very much. We'll return to you. I'm wondering, Mr. Babatunde Irukera, I mean, you listened to Professor Ogirima, former president of NMA, talk again about the challenges of the hard infrastructure. And yet, the Patient's Bill of Rights is supposed to be the soft infrastructure. Is there a sense in which this bill might be dead on arrival?
No, it can't be dead on arrival. And I'll try to backtrack a little to one point you made earlier with respect to whether complaints can come to the Consumer Protection Council. Of course, it's just that with respect to professional discipline, we cannot discipline professionals. But we would work. We would advance the complaints and analyze and investigate and then present it as the work for the Nurses and Midwifery Council, for instance, or the Medical and Dental Council, the Lab Scientist Council, the Pharmacist Council, and continue to work with them. And I know that the Medical and Dental Council has now been constituted, and so we're hopeful that things would begin to move. Also, Section 12 of the Consumer Protection Council Act actually empowers the Consumer Protection Council to enforce any enactment whatsoever for the protection of consumers. So we can enforce the National Health Act, any regulations, regardless of where it is, with respect to protecting consumers. Now, whether the Patient's Bill of Rights is implementable or not from the infrastructure standpoint, the question I always ask is, if you had the best possible 500-bed hospitals, the best equipment, and the most skilled people with the worst possible attitude,
what happens?
Patient care is one thing where that attitude matters more than anything else. Hospital architecture and even the dressing, the scrubs, are all designed with one thing in mind, with the patient. And that's why you'd have big windows in wards so that, there's flowers and everything. In other countries, wear pastel colors. The place is usually white and bright because we recognize that how people feel is a fundamental component of how well or how quickly or if they will heal at all. And so that's why just treating people with regard, treating them with respect, showing compassion and treating them with dignity is the #1 requirement. And so if you had this great, massive physical infrastructure where the people were not personal and did not engage, I think people would still be happier in a small place that is not nearly as great, but where they could feel the warmth and compassion and regard of the healthcare workers. And so that's why, for me, I recognize and appreciate all the challenges with the physical or the hard infrastructure, but I realize that all of that alone cannot fix the problem. And I felt, look, what can we at the Consumer Protection Council do to bridge that gap? And that's what I believe the Patient Bill of Rights is. It is a bridge that addresses the gap. And because we're talking about lives, any initiative that works to save even one life is a noble initiative.
That's right. Now, still on this same angle that you have taken, because some people are also of the opinion that we need to also look at the background of those who go into the health sector. Some people will tell you that most people who go into the school of nursing or who decide to study medicine sometimes do it because, one, of the name, and for instance, for those to the school of nursing, because there's nothing else to do. And so you find out that they are not passionate about the health sector, but they're just doing something that will bring in money at the end of the day. What do we need to do in terms of reorientation to make sure that only those who are passionate about people, who are passionate about giving care to people, go into this sector?
I think there's a fundamental error in how things started. And so, for instance, I mean, if there are ever professions where the entry qualifications should be extremely high, not necessarily from an academic standpoint, it has to be the medical profession. And so to characterize any profession in healthcare, nursing or otherwise, as where people go when they can go somewhere else, in itself is a slippery slope. But we can fix that. We can fix that. And the way to fix that is to redefine what your role will be, regardless of how you came in. I know many people who are lawyers like me who didn't intend to study law, but they've made phenomenal lawyers and have found their passion in law. And so if what the Patient Bill of Rights represents and the whole spectrum of that becomes a key and a vital part of training and curriculum, so it won't matter how you come in. What will be most important is that by the time you're going out of nursing school or any medical training, you understand what your role is. And so what you would find is that building that knowledge and skill set would assist you to succeed. And you would find that people who really don't have that passion ultimately go do something else. I know people who studied law and are in music, but because they recognize that ultimately the skill set to succeed as a litigator or some other type of lawyer just doesn't inspire them. And so what would happen is that you're going to find people who ultimately study, have the skill set, but will realize that this isn't for them and would be able to go some other way. And so you make an important point there, that even what the Patient Bill of Rights characterizes is far more than an awareness campaign for the interaction in the healthcare space, but also something fundamental from the training standpoint from the early stages of those who are going to emerge as healthcare professionals.
All right, thank you very much. Let's bring in again Dr. Mary Bole. Dr. Mary Bole, one of the major indices of the healthcare system in Nigeria has been, if you like, the frequent industrial actions by various associations, resident doctors, NMA, nurses, and so on and so forth. What will be the nexus between a patient's Bill of Rights and then an industrial action in spite of the fact that healthcare is an essential service? And I'm sure that viewers who are watching, some of them will have had the experience, or they know somebody who has passed away. At the time, you know, healthcare professionals were on strike. With the frequent strikes, we're not going to get into the reasons for the strikes, because that would hark back to the hard infrastructure, salaries, and so on and so forth. But how will the rights, the Bill of Rights, be enforced in a situation where you're having wildcard strikes?
Well, starting from the beginning, healthcare is an essential service. As essential service, you are not supposed to go on strike. In fact, if you look at the labor laws, for essential services, they don't have a right to go on strike. And I also want to reiterate that if you look at the patient's Bill of Rights, it says something about you informing the patient when you are not going to be available. And that means if you are having a patient in your care, and for one reason or the other, you are even not going to be available, you make alternative arrangements for the care of the patient. So if we imbibe the principles of the Patient's Bill of Rights, as enshrined also in Part 3, Section 20 to 30 of the National Health Act, it means healthcare providers should not be going on strike. And what it means for the patient is that the patient is assured of quality service. The patient is assured that he cannot walk into any healthcare setting without getting the services he or she deserves. And from the healthcare provider's angle, it also gives him some kind of, will I call it kind of, it places some kind of demands on him. You're not supposed to go on strike. That is the meaning of that, if we implement it to the letter. I also want to use this opportunity to correct certain impressions. It's not as if the healthcare providers don't know these rights, but we need to reinforce the rights from time to time for them to know. And for the patients themselves, most patients don't know their rights, just like the majority of Nigerians don't also know their rights. By bringing this to the fore, we're also reinforcing the message that these are your rights, demand for them, so that they can be implemented. I also want to use this opportunity to bring in the work of the role of civil society organizations. We have them all over the place. It is now their function or their place to ensure that these rights are enforced.
I'm wondering, thanks. Joy, I would like, because we are getting pressed for time now, we have some tweets that have come in, but Professor Ogirima from Kaduna Network Center, again, in practical, the question is going to him, in practical terms, Professor Ogirima, let's go through, say, the protocols, if there's an emergency or otherwise in the hospital. Some of the frequent reports you get to hear about or you get to read about are as follows. They will ask the patient or whoever has brought the patient to go and take card, to go and pay this one, to go and pay that. In the meantime, the healthcare givers or the ancillary staff, they are shuffling their feet. The patient who has been brought in, his life is leaking away because the person is bleeding. There is no attention. And then almost invariably, the patient passes away. Or alternatively, they will say, if you don't make a deposit, we will not treat you.
That is a wrong assumption. In the center I practice, in the emergency room, there is always emergency doctors and nurses on standby, 24 hours. And once an emergency comes in, you don't have to tell the doctor or the nurse. From a distance, you recognize that that life is in a critical need of care. And that's why all those medical informations that are needed to be documented, we need maybe a card. Sorry, we don't even have, most of our hospitals are not electronically equipped to handle data. And that's one of the flaws, that is one of the challenges that we are having. From a glance at a patient, the nurse and the doctor, we go straight and take care of the ABC of that patient. We don't ask for where the folder is. If any doctor, as at today, is demanding that a patient's folder, a patient on emergency, on a stretcher, is being wheeled into the casualty, demanding for money, that is false. And I will not take that. No medical doctor, no medical director should take that. And that comes to mind the discipline in the profession. As a chief executive of a hospital, you are supposed to have some guidelines. And the Federal Ministry of Health has given us some guidelines. You don't start demanding for money. You attend to the patient A, B, C. Every doctor, every medical personnel know what ABC means. Access to air, breathing, and circulation. Once you can take care of these three, You don't start looking for money to take care of those ones if the gadgets are there. But as a doctor, as a nurse, how do you maintain the airspace and the airway patent? Is it with bare hand? No. How do you make sure the breathing is going on? You can't do that with your bare hand. The only thing you can do is you can only give CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And while you are doing that, by the time you are stabilizing the patient, all the other protocols come in. Of course, you need to document what you have observed from minute 1. And for the patient to get stabilized and for subsequent procedure, that patient's record system must be intact. And that's why maybe after 30 minutes of resuscitating a patient, you start looking for the file. So if these things are carried on systematically, no life will be lost unnecessarily.
Thank you very much, Professor Ogirima from our Kaduna Network Center. Now we have a couple of tweets coming in and we would like to read to you so you can hear what our viewers who joined us online are saying concerning this conversation. This first one is from Umar Ben, and he says the unprofessional conduct of medical and health workers is perceived to be on the increase. The bill is timely. Relevant professional code of ethics should equally be revisited. Feedback mechanism should be strengthened.
Agbo Jibril has this tweet. Now, the Patient's Bill of Rights is a very good development in our healthcare system. But the video demo depicting ill-treatment of patients is an assault to the nurse.
And Festus Akimbo Iwa tweets, Patient's Bill of Rights in our country should be commended. Hope it will ensure we are well taken care of when we're ill. And hope it will also ensure that our medical professionals have access to the highest levels of knowledge and skill needed to improve our health care system.
Law Alpha C has this tweet. Where a patient's right to be treated is violated, where would the patient seek justice?
And still coming from Law Alpha C, factors that will affect this lofty policy include the private practice of health caregivers and the frequent industrial strikes.
All right, those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime, but there's a pertinent question there popped by Law Alpha C. And I would like the CPC Director General to respond to that. Where a patient's right has been violated, where can he or she seek redress?
Good. Now, one of the key provisions of the Patient's Bill of Rights is that healthcare facilities themselves need to maintain a robust complaint resolution mechanism. And so they must advise the patients of these rights, and then they must also have that mechanism, whether it's a complaint box or identify someone who's responsible for that kind of feedback. So they're resolving. Secondly is the fact that we at the Consumer Protection Council intend to continue to harvest complaints, and we would take a very robust approach to enforcing the rights of patients, and also working with the Ministry of Health and working with the professional regulators to make sure that we're pushing the disciplinary cases, monitoring them, and holding even the regulators to account to make sure. One of the things that has come to my mind is working with the disciplinary regulators to have some kind of a monthly update that would say this is the number of doctors or number of nurses or number of laboratory scientists who were disciplined this month, whether suspended, expelled from, dismissed from practice, and these are the number of complaints that were received, these are the number that were pending. That type of transparency would obviously promote better standards. It would encourage patients to demand their rights, it would encourage them to monitor what's going on, and more than anything else, it would modify the behavior of professionals. I know that there might be privacy issues. Sometimes you can't disclose the identity of people who are subject to one type of discipline or the other, but at least the data can be available.
All right, it's on that note we would like to thank all our three guests for being part of our conversation this morning. On the Patient's Bill of Rights, we are sure that there will be matters arising going forward. First, we'd like to appreciate the Director General of the Consumer Protection Council. He just finished speaking, Babatunde Erukara. Thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you.
Our thanks also to Dr. Emmanuel Meribole. He is Director, Department of Health Planning, Research and Statistics of the Federal Ministry of Health.
Thank you.
And from our Kaduna Network Studios, the immediate past president of the Nigerian Medical Association, Professor Mike Ogurima. Thanks a lot for being part of our discussion this morning. All right, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll also be dealing with the issue of life and death, registration of birth and death, and what that means for development.
The whole team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs, which are everywhere. You collect germs that cause diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands and taking your bath with Dettol soap to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is bath, bath, bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one.
You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobu to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture. Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Whenever pain occurs, you want quick relief. Try new Nurofen Express. It goes to the source of pain and gets to work in under 15 minutes. That's why Nurofen Express delivers fast and effective relief. New Nurofen Express works at the source of pain, fast.
Being a mom is great, but when your child has a fever, you don't know what to do. I trust Nurofen for Children to take care of my child's pain and fever.
Effective relief you can trust.
What makes a Nigerian mom powerful?
I trust the power of Dettol's One Capful for bathing. The power of Dettol's One Capful protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Be 100% sure.
Thank you for staying with us. Now for the last leg of our discussion today. There is an apparent lack of vital statistics of births, deaths, and other essentials about citizens in many African countries. Here in Nigeria, the registration system, though provided for in law, is not fully implemented and at best not coordinated in registering births and deaths.
And the period 2017 to 2026 has been declared as a decade for repositioning civil and vital statistics in Africa. So we're taking a look at the issue today, simply registration of births and deaths. And we're being joined now by two guests. First, we'd like to welcome Sharon Oladiji. She's a child protection specialist for UNICEF, and she's based here in Abuja. Sharon, pleasure to have you on the program.
Good morning.
Also here with us in the studios is Dr. Eyetayo Oyetunji. He's a federal commissioner at the National Population Commission and chairman of the Commission's Committee on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics. Dr. Oyetunji, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you.
All right. So let's just begin by saying, look, what is the state of registration of births and deaths in Nigeria, the so-called, civil registration and vital statistics?
Nigeria has a long history of civil registration. As far back as 1863, a law was promulgated in the Lagos colony for the registration of birth and death. And by the time we had regional governments, various regional governments also put in place appropriate laws for registration of these vital events. However, no coordinated program was put in place until 1979, when a decree was promulgated to that effect. That decree took effect from 1988. It was reviewed in 1992, and that gave the National Population Commission the mandate to register all birth and death universally and continuously. Before then, the programs were not universal and they were not continuous. So beginning from 1988, the National Population Commission has put in place a machinery for the registration of birth and death continuously, universally. That means in every part of the country.
All right, let's bring in Sharon Oladiji, Child Protection Specialist for UNICEF Nigeria, into this conversation. Obviously, the issue of data and statistics cannot be overstressed. Now, let's look at the importance in terms of national development, and let's focus on Nigeria.
It's a whole lot that we need to learn about the importance of the birth registration and the death registration. It cuts across the lifetime of a human being, and it helps us to know that this child, at 3 years, this is where you should be. At 5 years, this is where you should be. At 20 years, at 30 years, at 70 years, and to death. So the issue of birth and death registration, it's so important to planning, to development, to socio-economic issues, to education, to health, to life, to employment, to having a passport, to voting. So it's if I can use the word, it's a substratum of a development of a nation. Because let me quickly give an example. If in 2018 we have 3 million children born, we know in 3 years' time they should be in the nursery or kindergarten. In 5 years' time they should be in primary one. So when we look at our data for entry into primary one in 5 years to come, and we find only 1 million children, then we know we have lost 2 million children. Then we can find out what had happened to them. For example, all the people that are doing their youth service now, maybe they're 20, 21 years, were just born 21 years ago. And now they've grown up, they're looking for a job. Where are the jobs? What do we do? Where do we go? So this is the essence of everybody knowing the importance of counting, of registering the birth of the child that are born part-time. Because it goes through life. Look at those in the workforce. When you enter, they ask you when were you born, to determine when you will retire. But what we have is, if you don't know the retirement age, because there are no birth certificates and we're only doing an age affidavit, it's subjected to whatever. So anybody can say, and wake up and say, no, I wasn't born in 1960, I was born in 1970. And then you stay an extra 10 years.
And what are the implications for national development?
These are the implications for national development. So somebody that is actually 70 years old, I claim to be 56 years old, is not very productive. But we have fresh people, fresh graduates, who can be in their place, who are brilliant, who can change the face of the economy, can change the face of development, because they are bright, is young. Well, you put somebody who's been there, you know, that's supposed to retire, that doesn't retire because we didn't verify the age when the person enters. So it's all over. Look at vaccinations, look at immunizations. If you need to know the age of a child to be able to provide, you know, medications and all that. So it's very important to economy.
Well, Dr. Yotunji, I want to return to my earlier question. What is the state of birth registration and death registration in Nigeria as of today? Because the commonest complaints we continue to hear about is that data is a major challenge for us in this country.
Yes, taking it from those introductory comments, although the laws have been put in place, the mandate has been given, and like I said, the National Population Commission has put in place the machinery to capture these vital events, there's still much that can be done and should be done. Presently, the National Population Commission has vital registration centers, at least 5 in each of the local governments in the country, in all the 74 local governments. We do have a registration center where we have registrars who are there to register these events when people come there. By law, a birth should be registered within 60 days of occurrence. After those 60 days, there could be a fine. But this we're not implementing because at this stage we're still canvassing, we're still attracting people to do this. Like she said, the benefits are enormous, but we are first and foremost concerned with the benefits for the individual, not even for punitive purposes. Having your event registered should be a human right matter. You cannot be invincible. You cannot come into the world and nobody knows you have been into the world, and go out of the world, nobody knows you even ever existed. And to that extent, we try to advocate for people to come and get themselves registered in all these centers. But the centers, as it were, in urban centers may be fine, but having 5 centers, even in a local government area, you find in rural local governments is grossly inadequate because of the distances and because of the lack of education, and sometimes because of poverty, ignorance. You need a lot of encouragement for a mother who has just gone through childbirth to walk distances just to go and get the child registered. So even though the machinery is in place, we do need more centers. We need improvement, like the theme for this year's celebration says. We need improvement in technology such that we're looking at a time when we can register births and events, other events online. You don't even have to come to our center, for example, where we can deploy technology that will improve the system we have in place. But presently, like I said, any event can be registered, it's free in any of our centers nationwide.
So in terms of getting people to the few centers you even have, let's even take it to the grassroots. Yeah. What are you doing to encourage them to change this narrative, this story you just told?
First is increasing awareness, publicity, letting people know that you can go to any of our centers, get an event registered free of charge. So the first is publicity. And like I said, the second is improvement in technology, making the process easier, for those who want to access it. In the future, of course, we want a situation where we make it mandatory. That is, at the point of accessing certain services, you will be required to show evidence of registration. But for now, we don't want to step that up until we have more or less mobilized and increased awareness. But ultimately, that is where we're going. You will not be able to access certain services until you have registered these events.
Well, you keep talking about these events, but we're focusing on births and deaths. Maybe there's some other event that you will also talk about, perhaps marriages and so on. But explain to us the protocol for registration of a birth, because in the urban centers, where the mothers go to the hospitals, to put to bed, they are also issued with a certificate. And then when you go to a particular center, that's the registration center, you also get another certificate. So explain, the protocols for registration of a birth. And then if you add to that one, registration of a death, what do you need to register?
Thank you. Like you said, doctors do give certificates. Sometimes churches do, mosques do. But essentially, and under the Constitution, the National Population Commission is the agency that is authorized to issue the certificates. And not much is needed. All a mother needs to do is take her baby to the center and have this baby at so time. If it's in the hospital, we may ask for evidence of the birth in the hospital. And where the mother is unable to do this, a surrogate, a father can do that on behalf of the mother. An informant, a member of the family, can even do this. There are questions that we will ask. What was the age of the mother at the time she had this birth? What is the birth order of the baby? Is he the firstborn? Is he or she the second or the third? What is the age of the father? And so on. These are simple questions that are documented in our form and are kept in our documents, our records. Thereafter, a certificate is issued almost immediately. On the same day, you can get a certificate as you go to these centers. So as much as possible, we like to see the baby, but even where the baby cannot be taken to the center, the registration can still take place.
Now, is it possible to have this done all at once at the point of birth, having something like a one-stop shop?
That's the ideal. That's what we actually desire, that before you leave the hospital, all of this is done. But we are not there yet. That's what we desire. In some other countries, like Cape Verde, for example, the event is registered for the baby before the baby leaves the hospital. It does not even matter whether the parents have given a name or not. The registration official can give a name. Subsequently, the parent will apply to change that name to whatever they want. That's what we'll have desired. But you see, the problem we have, for example, is how many of the births in Nigeria occur in hospitals. So if you want to put that regime in place, you'll be excluding a lot of births that do not occur in the hospitals. That's why we leave it open for you to come after the birth. But like you said, that would have been the ideal. By the time a child leaves the hospital, he already has an identity.
Okay, still with you before we bring in the UNICEF, talking because this is mostly now an urban phenomenon. The rural areas will pose their own peculiar kind of challenges. What then happens? NPC issues a certificate of registration or certificate of birth. You've not talked about death, but we'll still see the phenomenon of sworn affidavits, age declaration and so on and so forth. What is the relationship between the two? NPC certificates and then the sworn affidavit.
I tell you, it's really very sad that today in Nigeria we're still at the age of sworn affidavits and all that. Presently, what we have in place is we have given an allowance for every child that is born that is 18 to still receive our certificates, to still register with us. But ages beyond that, all we can do is to attest that is the age of the person. That requires that you go to the court, you swear to an affidavit, we access other documents, and then we give you a letter of attestation that you were born at so time and so on. But we are hoping to move away completely. That's why all these programs are being put in place, to move away from this, that from the nearest future, there will be the incident of having to go and swear affidavits. Maybe for people like me and you, but certainly not for our children. Should be out of it.
I'm sure your mom would have had you in the backyard, just as that. All right, yeah, that's fine. So, but for the benefit of our viewers, what Dr. Oyetunji just indicated, the requirement is for a baby or a child to be registered within 60 days of birth.
That's right.
That's joy. But now there's an allowance, administrative allowance, for you to be up to 18 years for you to walk into a registration center and get registered. Can you walk in individually, or you need a parent to accompany you? Because even the sworn affidavit, you require an uncle or another person to get you registered. So an 18-year-old comes up to a registration center. Does that suffice, or he needs a parent to accompany him or her?
If he can be accompanied with a parent, we appreciate that. But if not, if he can provide the information that is needed and we can verify this information, it will suffice.
All right, thanks a lot. Let's bring in again Sharon Oladije. The UNICEF, of course, operates in all parts of the country, but the challenges that are obvious with regard to registration of births in the rural areas will be one that should be of concern to UNICEF. Yes, yeah. How do you appreciate the problem, and what do you find to be the most intractable amongst these challenges?
Ignorance, the weak knowledge base of parents, of caregivers, that does not appreciate that piece of paper, that this child should be issued a birth certificate. That is the real challenge we have. To let people know especially in the rural communities, especially in communities where the mothers are not educated. And in our work, we do surveys and find that even a mother that our secondary school education knows the importance of birth registration more than those who didn't go to school. So that's a major challenge. And to deal with this challenge, we try to support NPOPSI to have a relationship with the healthcare sector, especially the healthcare delivery points, because the healthcare sector have all these community-based, community-based health centers. So what we have been doing is to create a kind of marriage, if I can do that, between NPOPSI and the health sector, because within the health center, there are also the problem of women not accessing healthcare services and prefers the community. So the healthcare sector has a lot of community resource persons. So we're trying to get the health sector to appreciate that these health workers, this village health worker, this community resource person can also talk about birth registration when you're persuading the women to come to the health center. This is a major place where we are at the moment.
Now, are they trained? How well informed are these workers at the grassroots?
This is where we come in as UNICEF to train health workers, to train all these community resource persons. So within UNICEF, the child protection and the health section are working together with the primary health care centers, either the Ministry of Health, either at the state level, at the federal level. And we're looking at how birth registration can be made very relevant to the health worker. And when you talk about data, we have what we call the rapid SMS Nigeria.org. Is on web. Anybody you can click. If you look at it, you see.
Not for those in rural areas, though.
No, I'm trying to let you know what we're doing with that, in the sense that that is how we track whether what we're doing is, because within that we can see how the health workers are supporting. What do I mean? When the data goes up, that's how we know. When you do an intervention and you work with the health workers in, let me give you an example, Osun State. You notice, or your state, you notice Katsina State, when we have a very good, solid relationship with the healthcare center, or during the maternal and child health care, you see the data go up. So this is how we've been able, this is what we want to do across the country. But in states where the health worker, understands, in Lagos State, you see the health worker, whether in the community, whether in the health center, telling the mother, register the birth of this child. Go and register the birth of this child, because NPOPSI is in all the LGAs. All the LGAs, you have an NPOPSI registration center. So for health workers that is well trained and that is positive, is able to direct mothers. And you see, we're tracking data. We have data for birth registration in Nigeria. It may not be, but we have it. And this, in NPOPSI, that is one of a commission where we have data to the local level, to the world level, to the LGA and health center, and sometimes we have world level data.
That's for UNICEF.
No, it's also.
I was wondering. Yes, I mean, what does that got to do with them?
We support NPOPSI. We work together. I say we marry. We try to.
You see, the reason I was just going to ask, because if we're still talking about a high level of ignorance, as you indicated, as a disincentive, as it were, for mothers to register the births of their new babies, why would you have, for instance, if that is the case, stationary registration officers or registrars? Couldn't, say, in the rural areas, couldn't they be given scooters? Let them be going around various communities, the community health, and saying, hey, let me speak to the people who bump again newly, you can register. Then you take the information, rather than expecting the mother and the baby to walk or look for transport several kilometers to the registration center.
That's the ideal. That's what we should do. But there are limitations in terms of resources. But what we have done is to enter into collaboration with states. And many of the states have been supporting. What we do to complement what she said about health workers is to have a network of informants. These informants can be imams, they can be pastors, they can be community leaders. they are paid by the states. That's the state government. We work together with the state. You pay community leaders, pay pastors and so on. They serve as informants. They now tell us, oh, an event, a birth has occurred here, a death has occurred here. They tell our registrar. Sometimes we even give them the form. They collect the information and bring it to the registration center. So where the registrar does not have a scooter, as you said, they can be our scooters. So to this extent, we'd like to call on more state governments to support this process. There are several states that are already doing that are supporting EPOPSI in this regard. They are paying several functionaries who serve as informers to the National Population Commission. And through this method, we are able to expand the scope of the events that are being registered.
Let me take you back to the issue of data. You can't talk about data in this age without laying emphasis on technology. How do you intend to use technology to address some of these issues?
Thank you very much for that question. You see, like you raised, this year, the August 10 has been declared as the African Day for Civil Registration and Vital Statistics. And the theme actually is the employment of innovation to boost civil registration. That's the theme. The day will be celebrated on August 10. And in EPOPSI, what we have done is initially our events were being registered analog on paper. So presently, we are scanning those papers to transform them from analog to electronic data. She mentioned the rapid SMS. That's a bridge mechanism we're using. As our registrar records an event, he sends it by SMS to a dashboard where these events are stored. But going forward, we have started a private partnership arrangement that will automate the birth registration process, whereby each of our registrars will have a handheld device that enables him to register the event, real time and online, and he's able immediately to send it to the database. But beyond that, we have to deploy technology in managing our database so that the database becomes operationally available to other stakeholders. It becomes available, for example, to NIMSI for ID registration. It becomes available to INEC. It becomes available to security agencies. You'll be surprised, for example, that INEC has approached us. They want to know the number of people that have died in every ward because they need that information to update their register.
How do you register a death? And who does the registration? Very briefly.
Well, the death registration, like you noted, has been a challenge. It's the same method. We don't canvass the information. We expect the relatives to come and register the death with us. And because of our culture and all that, a lot of our relatives, it's only when they require services, when they want to access benefits and so on, that they come to do this registration. But it's an area we're collaborating with other partners, for example, the WHO. We need death registration to be able to track causes of death, what diseases are prevalent in what areas. God forbid, if there's God forbid, you have something like an Ebola manifesting, you're able to know this if in an area people are registering death and the cause is that kind of thing.
But what happens in locations where, for instance, a death certificate is not issued and there's no autopsy? In communities, I mean, we have such communities in Nigeria. A person dies and within hours the person is buried.
That's what we're saying, that we have issues there, we have problem there, because the relatives that are mourning often do not feel inclined to come forward, to come and register that event.
All right, let's take these two tweets that we have on this conversation. Habila Kwarazakshit, one of our regulars these days, says registration of births is mostly done when someone wants to use it, which is unfortunate. Now, the National Population Commission isn't doing its work well in that regard. The registration of deaths, on the other hand, is done mostly when a disease leaves resources that need to be claimed by the next of kin.
And this one is from Mutana Farouk. He tweets, one of the most vital mechanisms to foster the developmental breaks of a nation is a piece of information. It is pertinent to strengthening the Nigerian archive where the registration of birth and death of her citizens will be recorded.
All right, so that's the much that we can take. We hope that in the course of your celebration of the African Day, you will talk about the anticipated milestones in the decade for repositioning civil and vital statistics in Africa. On that note, we'd like to appreciate Sharon Alajiji, who is the Child Protection Specialist for UNICEF in Nigeria. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Also, Dr. Eyetayo Yetunji, Federal Commissioner at the National Population Commission and Chairman of the Commission's Civil Registration and Vital Statistics Committee. Thanks a lot for being with us on the program.
Thank you.
All right, let's go over now to our sports segment.
Now, talking sports, Nigeria's